So you're moving to China. For me, the end of this month will actually mark 7 years since I first moved to China. And since then, I've actually gone through some part of the process of re-entering China 3 times. So basically what I'm trying to say is I got you. I think that the most intimidating part of moving here is not knowing what you have to do, and we're about to fix that. So I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know when moving to China, from what you need to prepare before coming to the steps you need to take once you get here, what kind of apps you're going to need, and finally what you need to keep in mind in the long term when you're living here in China. I've always been a student while living here, so I don't have experience for the process of like moving here as a worker, but most of these things will still apply to you even if you're coming here for work. So before arriving, of course, the most important thing is your visa. If you're a student, you will either be applying for X1, a long-term study, aka more than 180 days, or X2, a short-term study visa, which is for when you're coming here for less than 180 days or less than 6 months. So usually X2 is only if you're like exchange, maybe if you're doing like a Chinese year, they might break it up into 2 short-term study visas. But if you're coming here for work, you are more than likely getting a Z visa. But there are a few other visa types. If you're like, for example, like a journalist, you'll need a J1 or J2. Your school or company should be telling you what kind of visa you need to be applying for. So when you go to apply for the visa, you are going to need your original passport, like your physical passport, with at least 6 months remaining until it expires, and with at least 4 blank visa pages. You'll also need a photocopy of that passport. You're going to need at least 2 recent color white background passport photos. You're going to need a completed visa application form, which you can download and fill out from the Visa Center website. If you've gotten Chinese visas before, also you will need photocopies of those pages as well. If you had it in a previous passport, you will also need to bring that passport. If you're a student applying for an X1 or an X2, you will need an original and photocopy of the admission notice issued by your school, and also an original and photocopy of the JW 201 or 202 form that your school, they'll send you that. If you're a worker applying for a Z visa, you should also bring the notification letter of foreigner's work permit, some sort of registration permit from the company. I've never applied for a Z visa myself. This is just what I got from the website. So your company should be helping you through this. You'll want to do this application process at least a month before you're supposed to enter China. A month or more before. And the visa process usually takes like 2 weeks, depending on where you are. I'll link the website for the General Visa Center website in the description so you can check for yourself what documents you need. If you're American or you can't select your country on the website, that means you have to do your visa through like the consulate or the embassy in your country. So look on their website for the links to apply. Depending on your own situation, there might be other documents you will need. So I highly recommend looking through this yourself very carefully to make sure you are taking all the documents you need. Okay, now that snooze fest is over, let's talk about packing. So I'm not going to talk about like every item you need to pack. I think, you can figure out for yourself, what clothes do I want to bring? Check the weather of where you're going. Like if you're going to Beijing, there's going to be winter, it's going to get cold. But if you're going to like Guangzhou, like it's hot all year round. So I shouldn't need to tell you that. You can figure that out. But what I do want to mention is you can buy practically anything in China. So I wouldn't suggest buying like a bunch of new things before coming to China. But if you have like certain special things that you're going to miss that you think you probably can't buy it online. For example, I'm from Michigan and we have these like cookies that are made locally that you're like, I'm not going to find them on Taobao, online in China. When I come, I might want to bring a few packs so that every now and then, if I'm really craving it, like I can eat some. Or maybe if you have maybe like a religious item or something, something very specific like that, maybe you want to bring that with you. But really, you can buy a lot of things online. And even then, like a lot of aspects of your life will change. Your habits will change when you move here. So like, for example, like cereal, you might not want to eat cereal anymore. If you're someone who usually eats a lot of cereal for breakfast, like you're going to start eating whatever people eat here, Okay, now let's start talking about things that you're going to need to do right before you leave. You may want a temporary travel SIM. I wouldn't recommend getting it for months, maybe just a few days, because right after you arrive in China, you're going to end up changing to a local SIM. And it's really worth it to get a local SIM card because it's going to be a lot cheaper and more convenient. But I'll explain more about getting a SIM card in a few minutes. Then another thing you're going to want to figure out is VPN. Many foreign websites and practically all foreign social media is blocked in China. So whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Gmail, Google Drive, like all of those things are blocked. I don't have a specific VPN to recommend. The one I use is used by locals, but due to like instability and stuff, it's not publicly available right now. But I can tell you which ones to avoid. So well-known VPNs like Surfshark, NordVPN, ExpressVPN, they're pretty much useless in China. I know some people use Astral, but I think that's also pretty bad. It doesn't connect a lot of the time. They have a lot of problems because they're really well known. Also, Astral's really overpriced. I'm not saying these ones don't work outside of China, by the way. Like in China, they do not work. They're pretty much useless. When you're looking for a VPN, I would recommend looking on Reddit in the subreddit r/China Life. They're very helpful. They have VPN master posts, I think like every month. And I'll link that subreddit in the description. So if you want to go take a look at that subreddit. And since we're on the topic of that subreddit, for example, if you're someone who has like prescription medication and you don't know how to do that process of like getting it prescribed in China or bringing a bunch of it to China, specific questions like that, like I don't know how to help with that. I've never had to go through that before. You can look in that subreddit, you can ask around in that subreddit because there's a pretty big chance that someone has experienced that and is gonna be able to provide an answer for you. Okay, the last thing I want to mention before you leave for China is cash. So I would recommend exchanging some cash before you come to China. A few hundred kuai would be good, 1,000, I don't know, whatever you think is okay. But I would recommend at least 300 kuai, so about $45 minimum. Kuai is like the way you refer to Chinese yuan, renminbi, like we just say kuai, by the way. Even though most people do not use cash at all in China, it's good to have physical cash in case of an emergency, especially when you come here for the first time. There's different problems that could happen and you don't have your Chinese bank account open yet. The reason I say at least 300 is because you will want at least 100 in cash to deposit when you open your Chinese bank, and we'll get back to that in a moment. Then in case you have to pay for a taxi with cash when you arrive, you might need somewhere between 100, 200 kuai for that. I think Alipay has a feature where you can add a foreign card to your account. So that would be the best way to pay for things when you first arrive. Because even though places are legally required to accept cash, they might make it really difficult. They might not have change. But like if you can't figure that out, if you can't make an account, you can still bring cash. You're only going to need to use it for like a few days anyway. Also, even if you do get the Alipay to work, there might be an issue with Alipay or on your bank's end that might make it so you can't pay, so it's still good to have cash on you. So yeah, that's why I recommend bringing a few hundred kuai so you won't get caught in a tricky situation. So now let's talk about things to do after you arrive in China. It's getting kind of dark, so I'm gonna head inside and keep talking. So let's imagine you've just landed in China. You're going to want to make sure that you have some basic information on hand for when you're going through immigration. You'll probably fill out where you're staying. So for students, you can put the address of your school. You also might need to write down a contact number, like a contact in China, and you can put like the phone number for your school or your company. It would be best to like put all this information on like a note on your phone or something so that you can just like whip out your phone and have that information. It'll make the whole process go a lot smoother. Okay, so now you've made it through immigration. You've picked up your luggage. Now you need to get where you're going, whether that's your school, a hotel, or whatever else. If you're not getting picked up by someone at the airport, there's 3 main options for transportation to wherever you're going. So the first one is public transportation. Obviously, if you're getting in at like 1 a.m., this is not going to be an option. So this might be a little less convenient, but it is also probably less expensive. Most airports are going to be connected to the subway. So in the subway, you can go to the service desk and you can either purchase a single-use ticket from them, or sometimes you can get that from the machine. I don't know if you can use cash. I think if you're like giving them like a 100 kuai bill, but you can also purchase a physical IC card, physical, subway pass card. I think you only need your passport and at least 20 kuai to get one. A lot of people actually use digital cards, which is just like a QR code on like Alipay. I don't know if you'd be able to set that up on the first day though. The second option is going to the taxi line. So you just follow the signs that say taxi and you just go and you wait in a line and you will get assigned a taxi. It's best for that if you have a Chinese address or Chinese name of like your school or wherever you're going. on your phone to show the driver. And then at the end of your ride, you can either pay digitally or with cash, whichever one you have. The third option is to use e-hailing, which is just like Uber, using an app to call a taxi. The most popular e-hailing taxi app is called Didi. They also have it as like a mini app on Alipay and WeChat. So you would just search Didi on one of those apps to find it. But you need to make sure you have a payment method on the app. So now let's talk about all the important things you need to do after you leave the airport. I would recommend getting a folder and like putting all your important documents in the folder. It will help you a lot with the different things you need to apply for, the different things you need to sort out after you get here. So that would be documents like from your school and all these important documents you get in the first week or so that you're here in China. And you can also put some like white background photos, for applying for different, documents or whatever. Those would also be helpful later on. Because sometimes you go to a place and you don't think they're going to ask for a certain document, and they might ask like, oh, hey, can we see, blah, blah, whatever document. Anyway, now there are 2 things that you need to do like your first day or your second day that you arrive. So one of them is getting a SIM card. Even if you have a temporary SIM, I would recommend getting it as soon as possible, because that way you don't need to go and change your phone number for different things. So there are 3 major providers in China: China Mobile, China Unicom, and China Telecom. Though I don't actually know anyone who uses Telecom, but apparently it's really popular. I think all 3 of these are like basically the same. I personally use China Unicom. All you have to do is go into the store with your passport, pick out a plan, pick out a phone number, and then they will scan your passport and give you your SIM card. Some plans you can choose to pay monthly, or you can choose to pay like for a whole year ahead of time. And if you already have a WeChat account, you're going to want to go and change your phone number in your WeChat account. The next thing is register your address with the police. When you do this, depends on where you're staying. So if you're moving straight into a dorm or something like that, you're going to want to do this on like your first day. Usually a teacher will give you some sort of document proving that you live in the dorm after you've paid for your dorm. And then you'll take that document as well as your passport and go to the police station. But some schools will either do this process for you, or they'll give you a QR to scan and then you can do the process online. If you're staying in a hotel and then renting an apartment, the hotel staff are going to like register you themselves. Like you don't have to worry about the registration. But when you move out and you move into the apartment, then you're going to go do the registration. So once you move into your apartment, you're going to take the signed contract, a copy of your landlord's ID card, or just have like his ID card information somehow, and your passport, and then you're going to go register at a police station. You can also register online, but if it's your first time doing this, it might just be easier for you to run over to the police station, or they might like take a look at what you have and then give you the QR code to scan. But something very important for everyone to know is that the registration is supposed to be done within the first 24 hours of moving in. If you wait too long to do it, you may be fined and have to sign some sort of warning paper. And if you keep repeatedly failing to do it, you might get into more trouble. And just quickly, since we're on the topic of renting an apartment, I have a whole video explaining how that works. I'll have it linked in the description. And also, if you're moving into an apartment that doesn't include Wi-Fi, you can go back to the same place that you got your SIM card and buy some Wi-Fi. It's called Quandai in Chinese. And they'll scan your passport again when you buy it. I would strongly urge you not to let someone else buy it for you. Like, they'll be like, oh, I'll come install it for you, and then they'll like purchase it and you just pay them. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you're moving to an apartment that doesn't already have Wi-Fi, some places include it, like the landlord gets it, that's fine. But don't do that. Because I actually got scammed that way. Because when I moved into a new place, and I think this is a big issue in like the hutongs for foreigners moving to the hutongs, which is like the small old city apartments in Beijing. I had someone come and I paid him to get me the Wi-Fi. And then a few months later, when I moved to a new place, he just never had it installed in our new place. And he like just ghosted me, and I lost months of Wi-Fi that I paid for. And I couldn't do anything about it because my account was registered under his name. So just go buy it for yourself. If you have to get Wi-Fi for your apartment, go buy it yourself. It is very easy. It's just like getting a SIM card. It's very quick. It's easy. And the cost is usually around 1,000 kwai, or around $150 for a year worth of Wi-Fi. Another thing that should be done pretty quickly after you arrive in China is getting a local Chinese bank account. If you're renting an apartment, you should definitely do this before you rent the apartment. I think most banks are fine. A lot of people I know, including myself, use ICBC, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. Some other popular ones are CMB, China Merchants Bank, BOC, Bank of China, CCB, China Construction Bank, and CEB, China Everbright Bank. You can also ask your school or company what bank they use. They might have a preference. When it comes to turning in tuition, they might want you to have the same bank. When you go to set up an account, you will need to bring your passport, some cash to deposit into your new bank account, and make sure you have some information on hand to fill out the form. You'll need an address, so if you're staying at a hotel, I would suggest writing your school or your company address as your address. Also, at this point, if you had decided to bring a lot of cash into China, you can just deposit all that extra cash into your bank account now. You're also going to want to see how you're going to transfer money from your home country into your Chinese bank account. For me, I'm able to just put my American card in an ATM, withdraw some cash, and then turn around and put that cash into my Chinese bank account. And now that your card is set up, you're going to want to make sure that you add your card to your WeChat and Alipay. If you struggle to do this, you can also try to ask the staff at your school or company or some bank staff to help. The next thing is the mandatory medical examination. This is less urgent. You'll probably end up doing it within the first or second week. I know some people may have done this in their home country, so if your school or company says that medical exam is accepted, then you can just skip this part. Your school or company should provide you with a link to set up an appointment at one of the hospitals. This isn't done at any hospital. There's like specific hospitals to do this medical exam. I'm not sure exactly how much it costs. I remember it being like 300 something back in 2022, though I saw some sources online saying it was 490 kwai, and then someone said it was 700 kwai. I would say it should be around 500 just to be safe. Also, make sure to bring your passport and the folder that I mentioned, just full of documents in case you need them. You only have to do this medical exam when you enter China on a new visa. So after a year, if you're going to be extending your residency permit, you don't need to do it again. It's just when you come in on a new visa. And this process isn't anything to be worried about. It sounds maybe kind of scary, like, oh my God, a medical exam. It's really quick. Actually, you basically just go from room to room in this hospital with a piece of paper, and then a bunch of doctors will do random checkups for you. They'll have you step on a scale and check your weight and check your height. They'll do a quick blood sample. They'll do like an abdomen check and so on. You'll receive your results in the mail, usually a week, sometimes less, after you get your medical exam. And if you need, you can also pay extra to have your results rushed. And finally, the last thing that you need to do right after you get to China is applying for your residency permit. You'll need to submit your application within 30 days of entering China. So you'll need to make an appointment at your nearest immigration center online. Then you're going to need to bring your passport, your police address registration paper, unless you did it online. But if you did it online, I would recommend taking a print screen or downloading a PDF of like the proof that it went through, that you registered. You might not need it. They might say, hey, it's in the system, but I would at least recommend in case they go, oh, we can't find it. Also, your medical exam paper, a residency permit application that is stamped by your school or company, a white background photo, and your official admission letter from your school or official work permit from your company. So it's really not that bad. I think there's only 4 or 5 things that you need to do within the first month of arriving. When you don't know what you're doing, it sounds kind of daunting, but hopefully it's not that scary now that I've explained it to you. And an important thing is always make sure to ask questions. Like, people are there to help you, your school or your company. You can ask questions when you're at immigration or with the police, and people will be there to help you. Okay, next, let's talk about the apps that you're gonna need in China. So there's really 2 apps that are pretty necessary that you really need to live in China, and that's WeChat and Alipay. You've heard me repeatedly mentioning these, so if you don't know what it is yet, WeChat is basically like a messaging app, but they also have a payment system. And a lot of things, they also have mini apps inside the app. You can search up different things and they'll have like a little app will pop up without having to download a whole complete app on your phone. Just WeChat. So a lot of official things are even done through WeChat. You probably will be talking to your teachers through WeChat. You might get notifications about school stuff through WeChat. So WeChat is definitely the most important app. And then the other one, Alipay, is a payment app. That's pretty much all it is. I mean, it also has many apps, so you can do things like order food, order a taxi, so on and so forth through this app. And then the next one that I think is very important is called Pleco. This is a Chinese English dictionary app. A lot of people I know use it. I think it's super, super useful. In the 7 years I've been here, starting from when I first moved here up until now, I still use this like almost every single day. And this one is a separate app. It cannot be found within WeChat or Alipay. And then here are some of the other apps. I think most of them can be found within WeChat or Alipay, so you don't need to download a separate app, though usually it works better if you have the separate app. So one is Meituan Waimai and Ele.me. So these two apps are both food delivery apps because a lot of people get food delivery in China. I mean, like, I get food delivery all the time. And sometimes you can get things that aren't food. You can get groceries delivered. You can get all sorts of things delivered through these apps. Both of them work fine. I don't have much of a preference. I used to use Ele.me, and then at some point I started using Meituan more. Like, there's no rhyme or reason, really. Though it's kind of good if you pick one to kind of stick with it because you can get, like, coupons for using the app. So using one consistently means more coupons in that app. I don't know. So the next group of apps that's very important is Taobao, JD/Jingdong, and PDD or Pinduoduo. I don't really understand Pinduoduo personally. I stay away from it. But Taobao is king, okay? Taobao is king of buying things online. And Taobao is like kind of like Amazon if you're from a country that uses Amazon. So it hosts a bunch of sellers and you can buy anything you can think of on Taobao basically. Basically everything you can think of is on Taobao. And then Jingdong is similar. It's basically the same thing, just different company. They have a bit more of like same day delivery stuff, but I think they have a little less selection. And then Pinduoduo is known for cheap stuff, but I think they do like crowd buying. I don't really know how to explain it because I've never participated, where like you and a bunch of other people agree to all buy the item, and then I can't explain it because I've never done it. But then another very good app to have is Baidu. Baidu is basically Chinese Google, though you can still access Bing.com without a VPN. But yeah, Baidu is like Chinese Google. I find it very helpful for if I want to search up how to say something, but I don't want to just use like translate. I want to know the like very common way to say a certain phrase or something. I usually will just Baidu it. And yeah, Baidu is very helpful. Like if you're looking for like things in China, if you're trying to like Google something in China, use Baidu. And also, since we're talking about Baidu, similar to Google, has a bunch of supplementary apps. So there's like Baidu Wangpan, which is basically like Baidu Drive. So if you want to have, you know, a cloud drive, you know, where you have your documents, you can use Baidu Wangpan. I use it now. I don't use Google Drive for anything. I use Baidu Wangpan. It's easier. If my VPN isn't working, I can use that. I also don't need to use my VPN data on downloading stuff. They also have Baidu Translate, which is like a pretty good translator for Chinese to English, and the other way around, English to Chinese, or whatever language to Chinese, and so on and so forth. And since we're on the topic of Baidu, there's also Baidu Maps and AMap or Gaode Ditu. And these two map apps are like the main map apps. I personally prefer Gaode Ditu, but like I don't really have a specific reason. I've started using that one and now I just always use it. Both of them are fine map apps. I mean, they work. They do the job. Google Maps and Apple Maps really don't work that well in China. Like technically you can use Apple Maps, but there's a lot of times where it's not really correct. And also through AMap/Gaode Ditu and Baidu Maps, you can also call a taxi through the app. And then I would recommend getting the app for whichever SIM card company you used. So for example, my SIM card is a China Unicom SIM card, so I have the China Unicom app. So within the China Unicom app, like I can pay for my phone bill, I can check how much data I've used and all that sort of stuff. But I know that you can also pay for your phone bill on like Alipay, WeChat, stuff like that. Then another pair of helpful apps I use is 大众点评 and 美团. I know you were like, wait, didn't you just say 美团? That was 美团外卖. 美团外卖 is 美团 delivery. Meituan itself is an app that is very similar to Yelp. If you are from a country that uses Yelp, a review app, you can check out what are the cool places, what are the restaurants. Sometimes they have, coupons. If you can buy a coupon on the app and then redeem it in the store, stuff like that. So yeah, Dianping and Meituan both have this. But yeah, I think that's enough for apps. I think you get the gist. You can check those out, see if you can download them. I'm obviously not sponsored. This is all just my genuine experience and opinion. But let's get into talking about long term. So there are some things you're going to need to keep in mind as you're living here long term. So this is very important. Something a lot of people forget is every time you re-enter China or get a new or renewed residency permit, you need to go register your address again. Now that it's online, it's very easy. You just need to make sure you do it so you don't have any problems later. And it's still the same rule within 24 hours. Then, before your residency permit expires, you need to apply for an extension, unless you're actually just leaving China, then you just need to leave before it expires. If you're just staying at the same school or company, this process is really simple. Just last week, I went to extend my residency permit, and all I needed was a white background photo, an application that was stamped from my school, and my passport. And because I registered my address online, they didn't even need the registration paper. They just looked it up in the database. The extension also costs 400 kwai, by the way. And then there's an important thing to know for students. So if you're a student in China, it is illegal to work unless you get permission to do a 6-month internship. And for an internship, you need to get paperwork from the company you're going to do the internship from and permission from your school. And then you're going to need to go and apply to have your residency permit amended, basically saying this person is allowed to work 6 months internship. And this also costs 400 kwai. So a lot of students will do things like work online for a company overseas or work during vacations. The consequences of getting caught working illegally can be pretty severe, with some people even getting deported. Of course, there are students who are pretty desperate and will work illegally. I would never say, hey guys, go do something illegal, because obviously it's illegal. There are going to be consequences. But I have to stress, if you're a student, the dumbest thing you can do is go get a job at one of those after school tutoring, English tutoring places, because that is the place that they always look to try to catch people who are working illegally. Every once in a while, we get a message from our teacher being just recently, in this place, there were students caught working illegally. So if nothing else, please do not go try to work in one of those places. You will probably get caught. That is the first place the police look for people working illegally. Okay. I feel like that is the least I need to say. I can tell you it's illegal. I know there are people who still will do illegal things. Please, for everything good, do not do that, okay? Anyway, back to other important things to keep in mind in the long term. If your passport runs out of pages or is about to expire, you most likely are able to get a new passport without leaving China. Obviously, check with your consulate or embassy in China. Depending on your nationality, you would have to call, contact, email, whatever, your embassy and ask. If you're American, I know that you can, because I ended up doing that myself here in Beijing. I ran out of pages and I applied for a new passport. And something that is very important, if you get a new passport, within 10 days of getting your new passport, you must go to immigration and register your new passport. I know this because I waited more than 10 days and then I got detained by police and I was fined and I had to sign paperwork and it was very annoying. Don't be me, okay? So know this, 10 days. New passport, 10 days. Less than 10 days, okay? So finally, the last thing I want to talk about is this graph here. It's not a very scientific graph in the way that everyone has a different graph for themselves. And this is basically how you adjust to living in a new place. Most people will start, first few days, maybe first few weeks, even maybe the first few months. You think, this is amazing, this is exciting, I'm in a new place, I love it here. And then it's really common for people to kind of fall into a pit after that where they're going through culture shock. and they're feeling anxious, they're feeling all these negative emotions. When I first moved to China, I was introduced to this graph, and I think it really helped me as I was living here, because every time I felt, this culture shock phase where I kind of felt all these negative emotions, or maybe I was going through, like, I felt uncomfortable, confused, frustrated, I knew that this was all normal, and this is stuff that pretty much everyone goes through when they move to a new country. And I knew that after this section, the curve goes up, and then you start to adjust to your life and you start to feel comfortable and confident. So I just want you guys to know, keep this in mind. If you're feeling like, wow, I'm feeling really frustrated, uncomfortable, you can have this moment of self-awareness where you go, oh, well, this is normal. This is culture shock. I'm going to adjust. It'll be okay. And it'll help you go through it a lot. At least in my experience, it helped me get through those hard times. That is all that I think I have. If you thought of anything I missed, please let me know. If I can think of things that I've missed, I will pin the comment so you guys can check out any more information that I might have missed. I don't think I missed anything, but we'll see. Maybe after I upload it, I go, oh my gosh. I'm really curious, if you're a student, what college are you going to, or maybe what city are you moving to? You can drop a comment, let me know. I'm excited for you guys. I hope that you end up enjoying China as much as I have. I mean, that's why I've been here for so many years. And good luck. I think that's all. Bye-bye.